So the practice here this week has been for householders. So it is not something that we try to accomplish any state of being. We simply sit and go about our daily affairs. And our attempt is to stay awake during those daily affairs. And whether it's whatever you do, you have a chance to actually practice. And the way we practice, it has to do uh, with simply this awareness of what it is that's occurring. So we simply one thing we have to, and this is where the practice comes in. There's a lot of teaching ourselves to remember because it's so easy to fall into old patterns and forget all about it. And then suddenly it's 6 o'clock or your morning sitting, and there's all this time in between. And it's really is a fabulous opportunity to take what you know and a practice and see if you can't just keep recalling, keep remembering. Notice your body, notice your breath, notice, oh, I'm thinking now. Oh, I'm remembering. Oh, I'm fantasizing now. We are such, we're phenomenal creatures that way. And yet, distraction seems to be the bedrock of our cultural conditioning, you know. So we have these 5 days, and we have kind of explored some of the fundamentals. The first night it was really looking at impermanence, that which rises and falls in every moment, every breath, and is actually a constant companion for living beings or whatever's here. It becomes a primal uh, kind of awareness that all things are rising and passing and impermanent. And there's something, the Buddha actually said that, one of the great happinesses is really understanding impermanence, because, you're all on a leash here. We don't know for how long, but it's a cultural truth that you all are going to die. That's just what's happening. So, with that knowledge on some level, then there is the truth that we can start looking at what is it that we need from this life, you know. And one of the beauties of this is impermanence is, you know, uh, it keeps on keeping on, you know, and it keeps teaching, and our objective here is to just know that that's true and that we can somehow relax into the truth of that, you know, because it is the bedrock of Buddhism is impermanence. Then the second night was about the body, and I can't think, one of the great Tibetan Saraha, he said, "There's nothing more wonderful than kind of knowing the body uh, and seeing all the rivers and the mountains that exist within it. You know, so there is kind of the microcosm of our internal world, which in some ways reflects the outer world, and we can begin to, in a sense, uh, from the body's point of view, is it becomes a way to study our experience, and so it's a phenomenal tool, um, and it's also based on impermanence. and um, and it's also something that where we can find liberation. You know, it's not just in our minds; it's actually this whole being. And then the third night was really about views and opinions. It's really where we start looking at how the mind um, creates these mountains and these valleys and these abysses that we can fall into and kind of lose the practice, you know. And so we're encouraged in some way to look at the power of our views and conditioning. And I always think it's somehow looking at, you know, that's true. There's this um, childhood and middle life and maybe old that um, is something that we can explore as part of our views of how things are. One of the truths of views and opinions is that as human beings, uh, we are conditioned, and so that conditioning is something that we first need to know. And if we don't know conditioning, we suffer. And so people who I think this is part of growing up is that we have to go through some of that conditioning. And in many ways, you know, I see it as in a sense cultural conditioning because you know how your family was, how your school was, how all that's conditioning, and so we grow up with all that conditioning, and that this practice is somehow that we have to unravel that conditioning, and it's one of the main functions I think of really deeper practice is we begin to break the conditioning. And if we start breaking that cultural conditioning, then we have a chance, you know. And because again, there's traditionally there's two trend sides. There's the kind of views and opinions, but also I always think of it, well, there's also judgment, you know, where it becomes solidified and we are looking at the solidity of it. So, and you know, it's so easy to then become judgmental. And when we become judgmental, uh, we may suffer and we may cause others to suffer. And so it's important to see the kind of consequences of judgment. And, um, and, you know, this is all really based on the fact that one person, you know, you have kind of this conditioning you were brought up in, and that, you know, whether it's family or country or, um, you know, what you see as your world, quote unquote, your self world. And the practice here is the unraveling, the, you could say, the deconditioning of that uh, cultural conditioning, you know. And if you begin to unravel it, then, you know, you go from this very selective system to a universal system, you know. Oh, you know, it's wonderful sitting practice. Oh, I breathe, you breathe. Oh, we all breathe. So there's really no separateness that has ever existed between you and me. It does not, it's not there. And yet we have constructed through our views and opinions and judgments very separate selves, you know. And unfortunately, it just, you know, in some ways we were brought up to especially Western culture. I don't see this so much. I still see it there, um, and this ideal that somehow, you're the center of the world and everything should evolve around you if you're the center of the world. Well, in some ways, you are the center of the world, but not in the way you think, in the way you are, because you are also a reflection of every other being. And part of our practice is trying to get to that place where the idea of separateness is thinned out, you know. So the self is thinned out. And then, we can see others. We can see, sometimes we can see their suffering. And, that is the way the world works, is that we have to kind of teach ourselves to not only hold ourselves, but begin to see and hold others. And this is where views and opinions are kind of, they're kind of tricky, because, we have, like the fourth night, that we created this identity around our story and around who we think we are. And that somehow, and I say this lightly, but it's a culture that believes, oh, I'm special. And that specialness is actually the conditioning of suffering. When we begin to thin it out, that's really what we're trying to do here, and no longer see that we are separate beings, even though we are. There is the kind of the relative view and the absolute view, which I'm going to get into more tonight. And we walk around with this identity, and I think when you're young, you have to create, in a sense, a kind of healthy self. And if you create an unhealthy self, then you have to suffer until you kind of readjust and come to that, because that's really what is needed to be part of a culture, And so for many of us, I know that for me, I was kind of, boy, I was messed up, and and I didn't understand. I wanted to, but I didn't, and it took a lot of sitting to realize that there was also kind of a universal truth that wasn't about me and it wasn't about you. It was about us, and that us is really the crux of these practices, is that we break down in some ways, the need for the separateness and the being special. Um, and as we begin to thin what you could say, the identity or the self out, that there is this tremendous joy that is actually inherent. It's not something that it needs, a candy bar or, some wonderful thing or experience. It's actually just there as part of experience, you know. But it's also when the thinning out of the self is there, then that idea of separateness has been thinned out, and therefore what replaces it is kind of a joy that says that uh, all beings are love, and I also learned to love myself because I am one of those beings. And so some people say sometimes that some of the Buddhist practices are narcissistic or self-involved, and yet it's not the purpose here. The purpose is that we go through that conditioning and that self that we've created, and begin to see with different eyes. And those different eyes don't see the separateness, but actually see the conditioning and the unity of all things. Now, one of the truths of that is that you also begin to see this suffering, the amount of suffering that exists in the world that we inhabit. And that's neither good nor bad. It's just the fact, it's just the truth that that suffering exists. And that when there's not such a separateness, then there is the capacity to respond, you know, and why not, And responding, I see, is this truth of, we've been talking here about Mountain Stream and service and the consequences of seeing clearly is actually very much about service and being part of that supports the social system, you know, which is lovely, you know, and necessary and needed in a very contracted world, you know. And I don't know, the other night somebody was talking about watching the news in the world, and I like that. I watch it, what a disaster. And but it's how you look at it, You can look at it again. There is, I'm an optimist, so I'm not one to ask so easily. But I know that, and I'm not that super smart, but I know people that are really intelligent, and they have kind of a cutting edge uh, when they look at things. And I think that's great because that's really, they can discern what it is that's happening. But they also have to have this truth about a good heart, because ultimately, when we come to sit, that's what we are. Now, tonight, I wanted to move into kind of from that identity, there is also this truth that simply awareness is something that, you're born rather complete. And then we separate out, we have to create a self, and, and that's kind of has a defensive nature because it wants to, it's told it has to excel, you know. Uh, and so, and we all want to, please our mothers and fathers and excel. And the consequences is the fact that we build this this view and these opinions and eventually judgments that are all about separateness. And so we have to somehow disassemble that. And sometimes you ask me, well, what is this practice about? Well, it's actually about disassembling. We've done a really good job of kind of building all the other stuff up, and, you know, um, and this has that capacity to, uh, in a sense, um, help us notice the separateness, how we defend our views, our opinions, our judgments, our property, our, well, whatever, you know, we're kind of, we're made that way. And there's also the good heart. When I was up in, I was thinking about up in Laos this month or so ago, and I was across from a monastery, and so I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. But one of the things I noticed of the monks, there were some of the old monks there, but there were all these young little schmucks, and kind of stepping on their robes, and they're all barefoot, and they have to go out with their bowls and beg and stuff. And but their conditioning is so different, you know. And what I see is, I see this in the Thai culture as well, that we had conscription when I was growing up. there was a thing called the draft, and thank goodness doesn't exist anymore. And that was kind of the initiation into for males, manhood or whatever. And there you spend 3 to 6 months, every male child. The women actually are Mechis, they serve. Uh, I'm not going to get into that. Uh, but they're trained for 3 to 6 months, or 7, 8 months, or a year, I know. And then they go back into society and they get married and have kids and they go through all that. But um, they have that conditioning, which was based on, this thing of mindfulness and honesty and ethics and a good heart. Can't complain there. A little different than a soldier, in their training. So a little more about this awareness, because it's so uh, you were born, and of course, there was conditioning, but there was always, from the moment you were born, there was this knowing, and that we have to turn our attention around and acknowledge and begin to own that knows um, is actually free. And the other thing is, you can't get rid of it. You can't say, well, I'm not going to be aware now. You know, that's not going to happen. So we actually we begin to use it as a means to free up or liberate who we are, and it's really the wonder of that awareness, because it when we remember, and this is the trick, when you remember, you suddenly you come back to the body, you come back to the here, the present. And at that point, when you're here, then the world is complete, by the way. There is no longer a separateness. And in some of the traditions, they put more emphasis on living in that, in that state of, you could say it's a state of non-separateness or non-duality, or any type of separateness. And people go, well, I can't live like that. Oh, yes, you can. People have been doing it for centuries. It's no big deal. And it first takes, in some sense, they say it has to be pointed out to you, because otherwise you're just walking around in it, not aware of it. And the idea here is that you have to wake up to this, Ajahn Chah would just call it there with the knowing. But I think you get it, because you already got it. It's just not something I can give you. It's not something that anybody can give you. It's just simply waking up to the fact that you are this, and that this, in its kind of most primal state, doesn't see separateness. It really sees the oneness or the unity of all things. And only our lovely brains that can easily create that self and that identity, that's then it's not where all the problems come from, because I think there's such creative things that happen within the self, but it also creates that separateness. And as it creates a separateness, then we get more and more, I think we get more and more afraid and agitated and defensive. And, so when it boils down to all this, that the awareness has to be also met by the heart. So that knowing that's there, which in a sense is the bedrock of all of our understanding, uh, it has to have, it's almost like I think of it as lining up the mind and the heart and the body, and that this is really what we're attempting to do. And then there is no, if there's no separateness, then the world is in order, and therefore, you know, um, the that creates a separateness is no longer the force that cares to possess, to have fear, uh, to kind of create its own uh, I, me, mine, you know, and it's more we, us. So I'm going to open it to questions now, because I can go on, but I think the questions are always a rich way of kind of getting this. So we're going to do people sitting here first, and Marcia is going to come around with the mic. You have to put the mic, was this somebody suggested? You almost have to put it up your nose. No, I mean, you have to just, no, that's bad. You have to just speak into it very carefully and close.
And
So,
just say your name and ask your question or make your comments. Raise your hand if you have something you'd like to say. Allison.
Thank you. Um, After last night's talk, actually during last night's talk and during the discussion after, I really gave a lot of kind of internal space, this question of identity. And, I think all of us could run through a litany of the things that we've assumed that we are, that we are this, that, or the other thing. But the the part about identity that I find the most perplexing is when in an unguarded moment, a feeling comes up, and I know that feeling is a deep, deep identification. Um, and I'm really curious what you have to say about that in terms of disentangling it,
this is what?
in terms of disentangling that that deep feeling that has all the internal earmarks of identity. It doesn't have any verbal, I am this,
Right.
I am
No,
that. It's
no,
just
it
a
doesn't.
feeling.
No, it's just kind of generic
Yeah.
in that way. And I'm just going to turn it because uh, identity is based on thinking and reflection and memory. And so one of the ways to deal with it clearly is with the heart, you know, and that if, you know, um, one could turn towards generosity and it would also thin it. But just the sense of loving kindness, and compassion can bring really joy that is inherent uh, in our, maybe it's stepping back from that, because that is so conditioned. And so we have to step back from it. And that stepping back has to do with the heart, not the mind. And then the mind follows.
Okay, so about that stepping back. I don't think I want to do the stepping back, which is kind of an aversive positioning. And I'm not saying that that's not really tempting, because it usually is. It's not, generally speaking, when that feeling comes up, it's not particularly pleasant. It's not really unpleasant either, but it's, so an aversive position is probably my go-to with it, but
Yeah,
I'm,
but
you,
you
but
also suffer for it.
yeah,
And it's a protection. And the system really is closed down in that defensive position. And the question is, how necessary is that? You know, is that pulling in, closing down, necessary? You know, it could be that one could feel the heart and dissolve some of the contraction around that, because it's just a habit. It's also a defense that's, you know, this is the thing about defenses. Um, um, it has served you well, you know, and so I don't, I'm not, I'm not against, it's just that then you have limited view of yourself in the world. And what we're really trying to do is kind of break open that limited view. And in this case, it has to be the heart first. The mind will follow, but it's the mind that created it for its own purpose, its own defense. And, you know, there's a lot of reasons. Everybody, you have your histories, and I honor them. I think they're, you know, they're valid. And we have to get over them, you know. And so that's what I would say, you know.
thank you.
You're very welcome.
Right, this is Robin at Mountain Stream, and we are taking questions from the virtual audience. If anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand
And unmute yourself.
and unmute yourself.
You got it.
Mhm. So it looks like no questions from the virtual audience at the moment. So anyone in the hall? Oh, Cindy has a question. Cindy, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, John.
Hi, Cindy.
So when you're talking about the mind, sometimes I hear you talking about the mind in terms of thoughts and feelings, and then other times awareness. But if we're talking about awareness per se, and we follow the instructions to be with the awareness, the bare awareness, the naked awareness,
Mhm.
it seems like that by being with the awareness that we're also with the body, or it seems
I hope.
unlikely that we'll be with the awareness if we're not with the body as well. Can you talk it? So it also seems like we're with the heart at that time, but it sounds like you're saying that's not necessarily true. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that.
Well, we're smart, you know, there is that truth of the mind is in our culture is a go-to, and the heart is sort of secondary. So in some ways, you know, the truth is that, you know, well, you know, the Tibetans, they always say, they can point to their hearts and say, my mind, you know, and I think that's actually what this is all about, is somehow that the what we know, there's the kind of Western intellectual, we think is discernment, but a lot of times it's just views, opinions, and judgments. And that we have to somehow go to our hearts and find our minds. And it's not the mind that is calculating. It's a mind that's trusting the universe as it unfolds, you know. So I don't know if that's helpful, but it's to me, so much of this is based on the heart, you know. And yet you can say this is a mind training because that's what it is, but it's a mind training that then goes to the heart. And I know that there's some schools that start with the heart, try to go to the mind. And this is one that starts with the mind and goes to the heart. But ultimately, it's the heart that knows. And it is where there is, there is, I was going to say non-judgment possible, you know. So how's your weather in Dharamsala?
Well, let's see, we had a couple days of monsoon,
I wondered.
and then the lightning and thunder, and went cold. The sun came out again yesterday and is supposed to be shining today. So I think we're going to go for a little mountain walk today.
Oh, great. Good. Well,
Morning here. Thank you, John. Thank you for your answer. So are you saying then, because it seems to me when we talk about non-separateness, then in actuality, the awareness, the heart and the body are non-separate?
that's correct. It's part of the illusion or delusion, you know, that we think them as separate. And yet, from this point of view, they're not separate. That was a way that we could distinguish, but not the way we could kind of liberate.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
I'm Jennifer Bliss. And I'm sitting here trying to integrate what you've said. And I'm thinking about how, like racism, for example, it's a mind thing. And how I've come to terms with that is that we're animals and we see somebody who's different from us and we go, and that's our animal nature. And so it takes our higher mind and our heart to say, oh, that's a lie. And to look with our heart to see the other person or other creature, whatever it may be, as, you know, another being that's sharing the planet with us, that's a part of ourselves. And I don't know if that, anyway, that's what I do. But, and so what you said here, which I thought was so beautiful, is that the heart knows the way
Mhm.
and the mind will follow. And
That's all.
that's all. It's so beautiful.
That's all, you know. And we could do it the other way around. The mind and the heart follow, but there's a difficulty there because the mind has a tendency to then criticize and judge and, you know, want it its way. You know, the heart doesn't. It simply is more aware of that universal truth that, you know, all beings are, in some sense, non-separate. And so to come to that non-separateness is the fundamentals here, you know, because we are good at separate, you know. And one of the things I like about the Thai culture is that they don't have I, me, mine in language, which is huge thing because you know, and when they learn English, they don't they use them really kind of backwards, because they don't have that in their language. And so there's a sense of non-separateness in their cultural conditioning, which is actually quite beautiful because then there's no, it's not sticky, you know. And here, we're brought up with this conditioning of being special and separate and, you know, and that's our conditioning. And that's what we have to undo. They have to undo sometimes their sense of collectiveness, of stickiness of the collected part of everything, How do you separate things out? So we all have, it's all challenging, and but I still go back to the heart knows the way. I love Ajahn Chah said, there's only one book worth reading, and that's your heart. I thought that was incredibly insightful, Let's see if there's somebody,
Any questions?
Marie.
We have one here in the hall if there isn't anything on virtual.
Any questions?
Marie?
Thank you. Close enough?
Yeah.
I always like the definition of yoga as meaning union.
Mm.
And I was listening and realizing, wow, how long it took me to realize how I treat myself will be how I treat others. And then I just was realizing tonight this union of mind, heart, and body when one feels in alignment, and feeling that union would then make sense of feeling similar union connection with others and expanding beyond. So again, it makes sense of this, how one thinks and feels aligned and connected in union, therefore will put out or treat others as.
Right. Well, then, one of the things is when we add the heart and the body, it's the nature of the body. Well, it's impermanent. It's always sending messages, and it's based on discomfort a lot of times, and that we need that discomfort to soften the heart, and also then soften the mind through its identity and its sense of separateness. So that's great. You got it. Little yogurt.
Good probiotics.
All right, any questions from the virtual audience?
Mm.
Anyone in the meditation hall? Looks like we've got a question over in the meditation hall.
No, Merle?
Hi. Yeah, okay. I keep getting caught. And so I was listening to your meditation with us, your guided meditation. And I was thinking about how I was driving back from Nevada yesterday and I was listening to Pema and she was saying it's all a dream, you know? And I'm getting caught by a family member and I'm getting uncaught sometimes. And this is new to me because I kind of had only listened to lectures online. So since this really huge, this breaking wide open breakdown in May, I'd like to be in person and to have a sangha and besides online stuff, you know, I listened to Ram Dass for years. This is new. And so it's like, it's all just kind of, I'm listening to various people, Jack Cornfield, I'm listening to Ajahn Chah's disciples and so she said it's all a dream and I'm driving back. I kind of liked it. I was like, oh, okay. Because, you know, I can recall dreams as being so fluid. Now, unless you're having a nightmare. But I just meant like most dreams are just kind of like you're high. You're like, oh, you know, you're just there. I don't know, you don't really grasp. A lot of dreams, most of 90% of my dreams, I'm not grasping, at least not that I remember. It just feels kind of like, that's why you can't kind of remember them. They're just passing by. So when you were doing your guided meditation, you were saying to be aware and then to be here and now, which I've heard a lot from Ram Dass, of course, you know, multiple, be here now. I was like doing the dream thing. I was doing, it's all a dream. And it felt like water. It felt like a river. And so I was wondering, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but it was the least caught I had been in a long time. And so I was wondering if you could speak on if I made any sense at all.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you know, when we're caught, we suffer. When we actually, you know, they talk about this as there's a language of stream entry, of entering the stream in kind of Buddhist practices. And all that's being said there is that we're recognizing the flow of things, the impermanence of things, the how fierce it is to stop the world, and how easy it is to float on the river of being, and that's really, there's a great comfort in that awareness of flowing in the river of being. Really is what it is, you know. And oh, it's not so different than dreams, but this is a dream, you know. You're living in a dream, and don't take it too serious. But maybe that's a little off the wall. But anyway, it's we take our senses and our thoughts to be solid and real, and we make them into an identity. And that identity then is fine until something difficult happens. And then, you know, we suffer with it. And as we suffer with it, then we sometimes just create more separateness. And so if you can come along and come to some practice that says, oh, wait a minute, you know, you're not separate. You're actually part of everything. And this is just a flow of experience and thoughts and sensations and memories and plans and all that just moving through. And that there is a fundamental joy that is there when we recognize it. And that's really a lot of this is just our ability to recognize what it is that's happening, you know. And when we recognize what's happening, there is a really a sense of love and care, and that truth of the non-separateness of things. So,
That definitely helped. And when I went to bed last night, I really was able, and I had trouble with insomnia. I was really able to be like, oh, it's all just a dream.
good going. So I'm just going to do a little meta here to close the formal part of the evening. And then we don't have Jen here, so it's going to be Marcia plugging us in. So just take a moment to just kind of feel your heart and see if you can't kind of release, whether it's body or whether it's a thought or memory, and just rest in this the flow, but put the attention not in the head, but in the heart. And then just as you put your attention in your heart, just to feel your body. And this is yours for this time. It's not always going to be comfortable, but it is yours. And it is a means to awareness and awakening. And then as we kind of honor ourselves, we also can extend it on out. And, I have my phrases, may I live with an open heart. May I live with an open heart. May whatever covers my heart be dissolved. May whatever covers my heart be dissolved. And then as you sit there, then we can kind of include the people on Zoom, the people in the room here, and that collectively we are just extending some loving kindness out so that beings everywhere may benefit from our practice here. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free from any inner or outer harm. May you be healthy and at ease. And that we extend this out to all others, that they may have the things they need, shelter, food, medicine, friendship, so that beings everywhere, and, through Nevada City and Grass Valley and up into the mountains and Penn Valley, all directions, beings may awaken and be of benefit to each other, for our benefit, and for the benefit of others. And again, if there's any power or energy that's created through our coming together like this, that we extend the merit of that out to beings everywhere, that they may benefit from our time together. May all beings everywhere be happy. Everyone can see you.
No pressure. Now let's see if I can get the mic right. So thank you, John. Thank you for this week.
Hmm.
It's really been a lovely heart process and gathering to be with everyone, and see everyone, on a regular basis. It's like every night, see people. It's been awesome. And to practice together, really beautiful. So, and good evening to all of our virtual friends, our virtual Sangha. Excuse me, throat. I've got allergies. It's very kind of rough in there. So yay. Open. Great. And tomorrow we'll see those of you who are doing the day long with John. So we will continue our day-long practice and teachings. And please be here between 9:30 and 9:45 to get settled in. If you want to see upcoming programs of Mountain Streams, it's helpful to go to our website. We have all the information there for you. And also we have a weekly program schedule and news, and you can sign up for that in the foyer, or if you're online, you can go to the website and you can get that every Monday. And it really helps to keep you informed in case we have to cancel, which we've had to do many times over the last couple of years. And what's new, because sometimes we have pop-up things that are happening these days. So please check in, make sure you look in and see what's up. And the website is MT Stream, which is kind of a great empty, but it's M and a T stream.org. So the heart of this community is really a generosity practice, and that supports, all of the things that happen here. At the center, it keeps this beautiful temple flourishing. We keep the grounds clean. Thank you, Steve. And to all the people who contribute through their time, energy, effort, and financial infusion. Thank you. Our virtual, new AV system is operational, and we look forward to more programs that we can do both virtually and in person, which we call a hybrid offering. So that's just beautiful. And then there are ways that we do our generosity practice of Dana, which is the giving and receiving practice. John has been offering us teachings all week, and you can offer him some financial infusions by there's 2 baskets in the foyer here in the entryway. You can give to John or to Mountain Stream or both. So we thank you for that in advance. And our virtual friends, you can look in your chat box to see how to give to John, or you can go onto our website, mtstream.org, and you can also give to Mountain Stream in many different ways. So we appreciate all the ways that you contribute to make this happen. It wouldn't happen without you. And I really appreciate everybody's energy, everybody's heart, and what it is that you bring. Together, we are stronger, as they say, over the COVID years. And it's true. So thank you so much for coming. And our virtual friends, feel free to unmute yourself and say hi or hello. And this is the end of our householder week. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good sitting with people.
Yes.
Hi,
Thank you,
John,
John.
Marcia, Sangha. Thank you. It's been wonderful to be with you this week.
Good to see you, Nancy. Good to see
Thank
you,
you.
Douglas.
Thank you.
Well,
You too.
Thank you, John. Thanks, John. Thanks, Marcia. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you all.
John always likes to say, sleep with the angels,